Ever since she was born.
Ever since she was born, she just was a light. Mm-hmm. She had so much love. And
I always tell people, make more good days, because you don't know when that one day is going to be your last moment. It was right before Easter of 2020. And at this time, you know, you think your life's going so well. And I remember thinking in my head, like, everything's going so well, something's going to happen. And I remember going to sleep and I'd just be out of breath sometimes. And I didn't tell him either, because I was like, maybe it's just me being like, you know, just thinking the worst. And Josh and I actually, we had this conversation. We had just watched the movie Emma, which is of Joseph Smith and his wife, and they lost many children.
Six children.
And I remember at the end of the movie, we looked at each other and we said, do you know what? We could deal with anything. We could lose our house. We could lose all these things.
Oh, we could go anything, but the one thing we can't go through
is the loss of a child. And we just held each other and we cried. And this was during conference week too, and it was 2 days after conference. And so, you know, you get a spiritual high and you're just like, life is good. And I even read my journal and it's all about everything that we learned. And then all of a sudden, that day hit, and it was April 7th, 2020. And we were having a perfect day. One of those perfect days that you look at and you think, this was a good day. And I always tell people, make more good days, because you don't know when that one day is going to be your last moment, you know? And that day we had all done our chores. It was like a Tuesday. It was during COVID, so all the kids finished their work earlier. And we're like, we're going to do a pizza party, you know? And Josh went to go get the pizza. All the kids got in their swimsuits. And Layla, she always grabs her life jacket before she goes out. You know, she knows that she needs her life jacket on. And we had the kids doing cotton candy by the pool. And our whole area is open. So like, because we're all out there at this time. And to come to find out, we actually had the whole thing recorded because we have a camera back there. And so we were able to, this is for later, but we were able to see exactly how that perfect day was. Because in your mind, you always know what the perfect day felt like. But to watch it again, you think, was it really a perfect day, or was it just because it was my last perfect day? But that was a miracle that we had that whole footage of the whole entire day, because all we did with that little girl was hug, hug, hug. She was just so happy and extremely amazing. And another miracle was Josh took one video that day. And the video was her.
I'm not really a video kind of guy.
No, it's not.
And it was a video telling everyone she loved her cousins,
her
her
first time
aunts,
actually
her grandma.
swimming in her little thing, you know, by herself.
You love them, and I just filmed her and then say hi to grandma, say hi to your cousins.
Then Josh actually had an important phone call that he was on.
And I was on the phone, and it was getting really loud outside, and so I decided to go into the bathroom.
And at this time, Layla decided to take a big, huge dump in her diaper. And so she took the diaper off, took off her life jacket off, and I took her inside. And at this time, Josh was in the bathroom as well. And I'm like, oh, we have an explosion here. I need to get her wiped off. And Josh was right there and on the phone.
I was on the phone.
Yeah, so preoccupied. And, you know, I was trying to do my stuff and everything. And the kids kept on yelling for me outside. They're like, Mom, come back. You know, Mom, come back. So they kept on yelling for me back. And I'm like, just a second, you know. And it was like getting time for her to have her nap. And she just needed to take, you know, Layla was going to stay inside. So I'm just like, Josh, can you just watch her? And he doesn't remember because he was on this, you know, we all do it. We're all on the phone or, you know, preoccupied and stuff.
Yeah, I went upstairs because it was getting really loud. And so I was like, oh, Shannon's in there cleaning the baby. So I decided to go upstairs.
So we both thought each other had each other. And so I walked outside and
I went upstairs.
And then I went on the side of the pool and just sat and watched everyone. So I could see all the doors. There's only one door that's open, and I could see all the doors. And Layla wasn't really opening doors at this time, you know, but that door must have swung open. But what happened was I was sitting there watching my kids jumping and everything, and they were like asking me just to watch them. And then all of a sudden my little son, you know, he's just roaming around. He was only 7. Was he 7 or 8? 7 years old at this time. And so he like looks down and he's like, Layla's down there. And I said, no, Layla's inside with Dad. And he's like, no, Layla. And so I run over there as fast as I can, and there I see my little girl. She's at the bottom of the pool. I just remember I didn't even think for a moment. I just jumped in, I grabbed her, and I just remember feeling her lifeless body. And at that moment, you don't know anything else, but just I was screaming my head off because you don't know what else to do, but just yell for help.
And I ran downstairs. As I came downstairs, we have these open mirrors to the pool from our house, and through the mirrors, I just saw her holding our lifeless daughter in her hands. So I swung up the door, I grabbed her, and I started performing CPR on her immediately. And I told everyone, go and find a doctor, because we have several doctors that live close to us. And so
my son, my oldest, he actually called 911. And thankfully, he just was able to get the 911 on there, but they weren't as fast as we'd like them to be. So it took a while to get them there.
Everyone ran off to find doctors. So for the next 10 minutes, I was just performing CPR. And
this is a little miracle of a little boy, our little guy. So I went knocking and banging on our neighbors, and they weren't coming. So I went to the next person. I'm just screaming as loud as I can, all around the neighborhood. And my little son, who was probably 5 years old then, he stayed at that doctor's house because it was his best friend that lives there, and he just kept on knocking and knocking. And she finally came to the door, and she says, "What's wrong?" She says, "We need your help. Layla's drowning." And so she ran over, and she was the one that was able to take over CPR.
I remember sitting there, and I'm like, if this is the end, Heavenly Father, please take me instead of her. And finally, the paramedics came, and they came over. They took over. And they said, we have a pulse. And they rushed her to the hospital.
In with the ambulance, they left my husband.
Because of COVID.
We had so many people come with miracles of like just a shirt for him and just like,
But one of the miracles that happened is, my buddy is a detective, and he wasn't on call that day. And he came over to our house and was able, when they were there.
Investigating.
Because when they go through that scene, I've never experienced anything like, but they treat it like a crime scene. So you're not allowed to touch anything. You're not allowed to do anything.
Go back into your
house. Go out of the house. I didn't have a shirt on. They went on my phone, my shoes or socks, and they taped it off. And literally, they basically then they start asking questions. And my buddy, who's a police officer, is like, Josh, he's like, it's okay. That was a miracle that he was there. And to give me peace, he's like, they're just following their protocol. And he's the one that drove me to us to the hospital. And when we were at the hospital,
walked through the whole house, did the whole investigation with us, which is super hard when you're not knowing if your daughter's alive or not, So when I was there, it just took them so long to let me in, and they're asking me questions of what happened. And I said, I don't know what happened. I was out there the whole time. I never saw anything, and it's from point A to point B is a long distance, and she's not the best walker. She's 19 and a half months old, and she can walk, but I never saw one thing, and I was facing that area completely.
And one of the saving graces with us is that same friend of mine, 4 days before this happened, he called me up. He's like, Josh, I know you're always trying to fix your cameras for out there. He's like, let's go over, Saturday and put them together. I'm like, okay. So he came over, and we had him up 4 days before. So when the police officers came, all they do is they
asked me over, and I had no idea.
They just grabbed the video evidence. I'm like, everything's on the video. And so they grabbed it.
And thankfully, because when they kept on asking, I'm like, oh my gosh, there's a video. You can go watch it. And they were like, okay, where's that at? And then right after they said, do you know what, this is a complete accident? And there was no questions after that, which was amazing.
Because everything was on recorded.
Yeah.
When we were in the hospital, we had some just gut-wrenching moments. But
COVID really hit us hard because
we weren't allowed to stay
together. But thankfully, there was amazing miracles that happened where we were able to stay together in the hospital.
We had a nurse that said, guys, just come on.
Yeah, and she was able to push it through for a whole night. We were able to be together. We were able to sit next to her. We never left Layla's side. There was always one of us next to her holding her hand, trying to just praying and pleading. And I will tell you this. So Josh was like, Shannon, we have to get as many prayers as we can to this baby, because we didn't know how long we had. And I'll be honest, I knew I was going to bring my baby home. Like, I had that much faith that I didn't even question if she was going to come home or not. I was nursing her till the day she died. Like, I was nursing her and keeping milk for her when she was coming home, and I'm keeping it in the storage house there, And I just remember going, do you know what? It's okay. She's probably going to have some brain issues. She's going to maybe we were going to be those parents who feed her the rest of our lives,
she may be like a form of a vegetable, but that was okay with us. We're like, we will take care of her.
Our main thing was
the rest of her life as long as she comes home.
As long as but then we started asking questions as it prolonged, she had all these scans on her head, and we said oh, she's having these seizures, just twitching like that, right? And they said each time that happens, it does affect
Further
the brain.
damage,
And so we were in the hospital for 2 days, and during those times, we did have miracles happen. We had 2 days with her, which I prayed that she come home. That was my biggest prayer to God, was like, let me just take her home. I'll take care of her. I will change who I am. I pleaded with him, I made all these promises to him, if I can just take my baby home.